Yes.
Okay, let me quickly show you the Lambda function in API gateway, and then we can start with the Docker. Okay, recording started, screen is sharing. Okay, Lambda function and API gateway, these are the part of the serverless architecture, or sometimes you can call it as a microservices. So
That was my
now, okay, let me log into this AWS console. Then just search Lambda here and API gateway. So if you compare the EC2 instance and the Lambda functions, so if you want to execute any jobs for particular time period, like for example, taking daily backups for particular instance, okay, EC2 instance. So if you consider as a EC2, then we need to run 24/7 for that EC2 instance, okay. We need to manage the your EBS volume size, then manual any if you want to install any packages on that EC2 instance, and then configure the cron jobs there, right? That is something some efforts are there, and obviously cost wise we need to take care about this running the 24/7, or even if we can use any system manager features to make it start and stop also, that will be additional efforts, right? But in the Lambda function cases, we don't need to invest more efforts in that. We can quickly just launch it as it is a platform as a service, and you can just upload your codes, whatever the logic you have written. Okay, you can just select the runtime, and then you can schedule. How you can schedule in the event driven in Linux or Windows. In Linux we have a cron job. In Windows we have a task scheduler. Okay, if you have a knowledge on the Windows side, so there is a task schedulers, we can configure that similar to cron job. In the AWS we can use event bridge, which is a serverless event driven system features. Okay, where we can use similar to cron job, we can schedule there are two features like pattern based or uh, scheduler based. Like let's say today 10 a.m. I want to execute particular jobs or Lambda functions, so we can schedule that. Okay, but there is one more additional feature in that case. Let's say, let me draw here. You have a S3 bucket. In S3 bucket, for example, if someone upload any data, okay, in that case, based on this pattern, we can execute any other Lambda function for different logic. Let's say this is a 1 minute. This is your S3 bucket. Then this is your event bridge. Event bridge also known as a CloudWatch events. It's the earlier one. Okay, event bridge, CloudWatch event. So don't confuse with that. CloudWatch events. Okay, they just renamed it the event bridge. It's a serverless event driven system. And let's say you have a Lambda function. So one thing is like you can schedule as a schedule base. Like let's say you want to schedule at a 10 a.m. daily basis, so you can schedule that way. Other thing is like whenever any S3 bucket get uploaded in this sorry, data uploaded in this S3 bucket, it might be anytime, right? 10 a.m. or any other frequent times. So we don't know about when the client upload in this bucket. So in that case, we can track these changes into by using CloudWatch event pattern, and then we can just execute any further logic for the Lambda functions whenever it's depend on the use cases in the real time. Okay, so this pattern also support by event bridge, which is the additional features apart from the cron jobs. So I have already scheduled for this one of the S3 bucket for the practice last time, so I will show you that as well.
So, but
Just there are
what is the use
yeah,
for that?
Because thing is that cron job is also it will be okay. Sometimes we need to give the task, but what is the use for this Lambda functions? Because thing is that multiple persons are giving the puts on the S3 buckets. If S3 buckets are there, I didn't understand that. What is the use for this?
This pattern base.
Yes, pattern base.
Okay, let's take one example. Let's say this is your S3 bucket which you are using for the any important data uploads from the client side. Okay, and you want alert for whenever the files gets uploaded in a day, like not a frequently cases like 100 times if there are uploading some users, so that might be very hectic. But let's say the important files you don't want to miss. So in that case, whenever the files get uploaded in this S3 bucket, you will get the alerts. So that kind also setup you can just configure by this event bridge. So whenever the files gets uploaded, you can use this event bridge to send out the alerts on the SNS topic. So that also one of the use cases. So you will get the notification basically. So whenever the files get uploaded. Another option is like another use cases might be whenever the files gets uploaded in the S3 bucket or sometimes in the SQS. Anyone aware about the SQS? Messaging service, right? SQS,
Notification service.
queue service. So this is a part of the pub and sub. Okay. If you just read about this SQS, because some of the project use this SQS simple queue service, okay, from the AWS. So whenever any message are coming here in the SQS, so you can just configure this event bridge you can configure, and you can just execute the as a target. Let's say stay function. We have these use cases. Stay function you can execute. In that stay function, you can run other multiple logics there. Like just get this message here in the stay function, and you can just trigger Lambda functions. So in the Lambda function, there might be different logic, like store generating the logic in the any particular files and store again back to your S3 bucket or DynamoDB table. But this will be use cases of the if any clients if any clients uploading any message or any data, either in the data in the S3 bucket or message in the queue service. So in that case, we can consume that by using event bridge, and we can just pass next logic to your Lambda function or stay function, where that function can be execute another operations in that case, any S3 bucket operations or somewhere. The idea is basically the feature wise event bridge we can use two ways, either event pattern base or any scheduler base. So I will show you that event pattern how we can configure that. So Lambda is a different service. You can just search from here, and you can see I have some Lambda functions here. So how you can create the Lambda function? You can just this is the manual way, but from the Terraform you can write down the Terraform code. Just manually is like just create from the scratch, okay? And you can give the any name here like demo, DevOps, Lambda. Runtime, there are multiple runtime supported, like a programming language you can say your .NET, your Java, Node.js, Python, and there are different versions Java 11, 17, Node.js 16, 18, 14 almost end of life. Okay, so that is the reason here they removed from here. Okay, because now they are suggesting to use latest version, which is the 20. Even sometimes some project can use Node.js 16 or 18. It's depend on their compatibility. Okay, so it's depend on that. So if I search, or you can just launch any hello world lambda function, so you can just take latest one and just create it. So by default, it will generate a sample hello world. So if you have any other logic, I will show you that I have tested last time for the taking stopping starting the instance. So after creation, you will look like this. Okay, the Lambda function dashboard. You can see the last modified date. It's 18 second ago. And this is the function ARN. You can use this for any programming way. Like people use sometimes Boto or SDK, libraries. So in that case, they will use this ARN. So this is the useful for the backend developers. Sometimes they logic to the programming way. Then this is the editor for the Lambda function where you can write down the script or any logic from here. Okay. You can see by default is a hello from Lambda. So how you can trigger this? Just if you want to check this is working or not. So you can just simply click on this test and give the test name. You can give any name here. This is just the event name basically. And just click on save. And one more time you can just trigger it. Okay. So you can see the output is a hello from Lambda. If I change this line here, let's say this one. Once change is done, you need to save it. Okay. You will see the option deploy. You need to click on that. Otherwise it will not save here. Okay. So this changes has been deployed. If I search, sorry, trigger once more time, you can see the changes are here. Okay. Hello from DevOps. So this is just a manual way how you can execute this Lambda function. The other way is you can see this option here, add triggers. If you click on this, you will see lots of trigger option is here. Okay. Alexa, API gateway, load balancer, code commit, lots of stuff are there. Okay. So I never tried this rest of the things. Even in S3, you can see SNS, SQS. If something happen in that case, you can just trigger this Lambda function. Okay, that is will be a different use cases. These use cases I never try, but you if for the practice purpose you can just try. So this is the event bridge. You can see earlier name is CloudWatch event. So if you just search on that and you will see the option here, configure the rules. Okay, if you can give the rule name here, test, and this is the two things event pattern or schedule expression, which is the similar to cron job. This is the format how you can set up. Let's say daily one you want to execute. So this is the format rate and in the bracket 1 day. Okay, if you want to perform the daily basis. If you want to perform weekdays during the particular timing, you can see 70 means 5 p.m. So you can schedule like this. Okay, if you want to go more details, you can just click on this link and you will see that more details. This is the pattern like how you can schedule the cron jobs. Once you click on that, add, the scheduler will add here. You can see the success message and you will see this icon here. So automatically next time you can see just expand it. Automatically next time it will be executed whatever the time you have mentioned here. Okay. If you want to
So
remove that,
this Lambda
yeah,
function is used for the backup purpose also. Whatever
there
the incremental files are there, we can take the backups from the Lambda function also.
no, this is just a like instead of using EC2 instance for any particular job execution, you can use
Mhm.
Lambda function for that. So this is just a platform where you can execute your logic. It might be your .NET based logic, your Python based, Node.js, Java, C Sharp, .NET, something like that. So you don't need to provision any EC2 instance for this EC2 instance or any container base. So instead of
Okay,
that, you can just simply just whatever the logic you have prepared, you can just deploy here in the Lambda function and you can schedule the triggers. So that is the
okay.
minimum effort and it will automatically happen. Let's say you want to take daily backup of the EC2 instance. So EC2 instance script you need to prepare first and you can deploy here in the Lambda function as we have seen this code editor here. This one, let me close this. Here you can write down your whatever the logic and you can just configure the triggers. So daily basis, it will execute this Lambda
This
function. Right?
this logic, which language it will be using?
This is the Node.js base. If I
Node.js based.
can, if I can show you the another one, I have some prepared last time during the practice. let's say this is for the connecting database. Okay, this is based on the, if you want to check, this is this lambda function work on which runtime, you can see node.js 18. Okay, here you will get the details, and this is one of the example in the node.js base. This is basically just to connect the database by getting the password from the secret manager. Secret manager is the AWS service where you can store the database password or any other password securely. So the person who has only admin access can get the passwords from there. Okay, otherwise that person should not will not access credentials. So this is the secure method, because if you put hard coded value here in the lambda function, that may be security compliance issue. Okay, so that is the reason in the real time cases as well, we should not store any hard coded value as a sensitive data like credentials. So for that we can use secret manager service. If you search secret manager, you will see here you can store your database credentials here. As of now, there is no store credentials, but when you create the RDS instance, when we see last time during the RDS, I shown that option, right? Credentials. So that automatically stored here. That credentials you will fetch, you can fetch from this lambda function by using this method. Okay, and then this is the query. Once I connected to that database servers MySQL, then I'm executing this query like create database.
Uh,
This is the
so,
database
sir,
name.
Namdev, I have one query here. Like we have used Node.js programming language, like we shown before, there are multiple programming languages that can be used. So we don't have the option for Bash Unix scripting language. Just we write a Bash shell
For
script.
bash one, let me check. It's a
Because I saw
Node.js.
Python to be, yeah.
Recently, they have added this option Amazon Linux. You can try with this, but separately bash, I don't see here. Let me check. OS only runtime. If I search this, okay, to learn more about OS runtime, include support Go, third-party custom runtimes. Let me try to create this, if this works or not. Because bash script I have never tried. Even
Okay.
on the project base, people use Java base or Node.js base or Python base logic. So that is the reason you might have heard about lots of other YouTube channels somewhere. At least DevOps should learn about the Python, right? So that is the another steps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, because I was about to ask that question only because it will be our job role, right? One of the job roles to create the Lambda
Yeah.
functions and write
Yes,
the
yes.
script. So in order so that we should have the understanding. So we will have
Not
to learn
not every
Python.
logic, but related to
Mhm.
infrastructure, we need to prepare for that.
Okay. And so in
Because
real time, is it very frequently we have to execute these things and create a script, or how is it generally?
mostly it's depend basically. If you want to execute, create new pipelines or any automation there, in that case, or if you want to perform any operations on the database, something by using any Python script, in that case as well. So depend upon the use cases, and it's all differently depend on the project to project, because every client has a different user use cases. Sometimes you need to, let's say for the, if you take the example for the Ansible, so you can just write down that script or take the database backup. Nowadays, if you have any traditional database where you install on the EC2 instance, in that case, we have two options. Either you can write down the bash script to take the daily basis database backup, or you can take the complete server backup if you have installed on the EC2 instance. Or any other operations, might be any S3 bucket related file operations. So in that case, you might need to that scripting part. You just execute that particular logic to fetch the data from the S3 bucket and push it into the somewhere or the on other locations. So depend on the use cases. but at least little bit about the Bash or Python or Node.js base. So currently I'm trying to learn the Node.js base in the current organization, where really I feel like if you have a little bit programming knowledge, so definitely it will helps very lot in the DevOps model. So that is the learning, and I'm feeling like nowadays because I'm working on the harness now. So that is giving me the more advanced, like uh, like how to use the variables and the parameters in the pipeline somewhere, because if you
Mhm.
search any pipeline, let me give an example, harness sample, or let me ask in the chat GPT, so it will give the at least some output. So the main goal is my point is basically it will gives the more confidence when you work on the any pipeline or any logic in the project. So at least you can try to learn Python or Bash little bit. At least you should understand the variables, how to use the parameters, or sometimes let's say you might heard about this triple or sometimes this one, right? This logic. So at least if we learn about this basic stuff, so at least we can understand this logic when we can use this kind of options. Developer by default they will know because they are the main core skill. But as a DevOps, if you understand the basic logic about the programming, so that will gives more idea when we configure any pipeline or let's say your Terraform code or a CDK code in that case as well. Mainly, this is the one-time task. If you're working on the real time, once you set up the pipeline, so in next time, let's say after if you want to work on another module, so you can take this reference from this whatever you have set up pipeline. You can just copy paste and you can just need to change the values there, like the project name, any application name like that. But at least whatever the writing one time, so that idea we should aware.
Mhm.
Soon I will purchase new laptop because this laptop giving me issues. In the lockdown, I purchased by 14,000. This is the what we can call like some company use only 3 4 years, right? In the big organization, and they sold out as a second. So when during the COVID, I purchased this laptop. Still supporting me somehow. So you can see this. It's working slow now because it's consuming more processor. This is the sample pipeline. You can
एप्पल
see
का ले लो.
this. Okay, definitely that will run more better way, booting time and all
The
the
thing
stuff.
is that whatever the thing is that you're working on the Linux maximally parts, and Apple is a
Yes,
very nice things for that.
boot time and other performance. So this is just a sample CI/CD file. So you can just mention like the step name, checkout, other parameters. So you can see this kind of a variables used, right? So if you have a little bit knowledge about this, so at least we can configure like this. So that will give some idea, yeah, why we are using this kind of variables here. So this will ultimately help us. So what is the meaning of echo? Why we need to print this line something and this dollar, variables. So that will help us if you have a little bit knowledge about this. If you have any backend developers or front end developers in your friend circles, so at least take one session with them, like 30 minutes or 1 hour, or you can just randomly discuss with them. Just teach me about just basic stuff like variables, arguments, like that. So I am also doing the same thing in my organization side by side. So that will help in the longer period of the time. That is a need of the market right now, apart from the DevOps, because Nowadays, full stack developer also managing the DevOps task. They are managing the pipelines and other stuffs. So that is and the company also don't want to invest more cost on the DevOps separate guy. They want to, they want a full stack developer also want to work on the CI/CD pipeline. Definitely, there are some limitation with the developers because they completely not capture the infra side, but at least pipeline wise they are doing this job. So that is the reason we as a DevOps engineer we also should start learning the little bit programming language. You can go either your Node.js base or your Python base. So that will helps in the longer period of the time. Okay,
And
this is the part of the, yeah.
yeah, and using this Lambda functions, we can set up different uh, like in this case you showed event bridge, right? So different alerts to trigger,
Yeah,
right?
this is
This
just
is the
a serverless event-based driven system, like a
Mhm.
scheduler, your cron job.
Like a cron job, but ultimately in the end it will be executing on any of the server, right? So whatever logic we have
Yeah,
used
so
here in
this
Lambda
Lambda
function.
function, when we call it as a serverless, that doesn't mean it's not a server. So in the backend, AWS managing their logic. We don't know how they are managing, but as a customer end user, as a, we are using the platform as a service, we just we don't need to worry about the underlying hardware system here. If you are aware about the platform as a service, we just whatever the code we have developed, we can just simply deploy it here by using their platform, and we can just start using it.
Okay, but my question is like if I have to execute this using event bridge on a particular EC2 instance, then how will add that particular EC2 instance on that?
Let me show you one more Lambda function here, which I last time tested. Let's say EC2 start. Okay, this is a Python based logic. Here you can see this is the Boto libraries where we use in the Lambda function to perform any operations on the EC2 or somewhere. Okay, region we can define here on which is let's say in the Mumbai, it's a region code is app south 1. How you can get this region code? You can just if you click on this, you will see for Mumbai app AP South 1. Okay, for Hyderabad you can see this like this. So these are the of values we can use in the programming language. Okay, and you can see instances. Whatever the instance ID you want to perform, let's say I want to start and stop daily basis by using Lambda function. So this is the sample Lambda function you can consider, and we can give the instance ID here like this in the comma, and then you can just mention the further logic. Start your instance like that. EC2 dot start instance and the instance's ID here.
Okay, okay,
And
got it.
apart from this, in the configuration, just one more permission we need required. When we create the Lambda function, there is a one IAM role created. Okay, this is the default thing. So if we want to start or stop the EC2 instance, then this Lambda function role that it has to be permission for the EC2 instance. Otherwise, you will get the error permission denied or something.
Namdev, here I need to ask one question. If here in this Python you have
Hmm.
written the that server instance names you have written. Whenever we
Hmm.
are just restarting or just power off that, how we can
Hmm.
retrieve that? Because for example, I have one logic. Ki, Monday to Friday, my server is getting started shut down,
Hmm.
and Saturday, Sunday, all the server need to be deleted. On the Friday, all the servers need to be deleted, and Sunday morning, sorry, Monday morning at 8 o'clock, all the servers, this configuration need to be up. So how we can create this type of logics? So could you please just brush up on that side, so it will be easier for us also.
So in that case, you can just configure two multiple Lambda functions here. One for the launching your EC2 instance from the Monday, and another one is for deleting that instance. Okay, but in that case, because let's say today you have created the, let's say, two instances, right?
Hmm.
And every instance has their unique instance ID, right?
Hmm.
Instance ID will not be the same if you observe instance ID. So today you have created and Friday you have deleted, right? This will happen by the Lambda function logic. You can write down easily, no issues. Now next Monday you have launched more instances as per logic, like two instances, okay? And this will not be a same instance ID, right?
Yes.
This will be a different. So in that case, because this will be not in this case, Lambda function, same Lambda function will not work because you will not get the same instance ID here. So in that case, you can approach by using the tagging option. Whenever you launch your EC2 instance, you need to provide the tag. So based on the tag, you can write down the Lambda function logic. So your Lambda function will fetch those tag from the resources, and he will perform the operation like whatever you want to perform, like delete or create.
Just like a tagging, it's like a just like a Kubernetes tagging.
Resource tagging. Let me show you here.
Yes.
Yes, resource tagging. Because instance ID will not be same every time. So it will be very hectic job every time. Just when the server launched, you can update manually that instance ID. Okay, this one. So the better to you can just start with the tagging base. If you click on this resources and just go to the tags, you can create like this. So for example, you can just create one more tag like delete, and you can give the name like any name like what you can say. For example, demo. So in the Lambda function, you can write down this logic. Just get this delete tag. So wherever the instance created, and you can just delete that based on these tags. So in the Lambda function, you can just write down the logic, or you can just search.
And how we can search? Could you please show us that?
Just a minute. Okay, it's working. It's really working very slow. So let me try. Let me search act as a, let's say, Node.js expert and write Lambda function to create EC2 server from AMI. Okay, based on tags, and create one more Lambda function on every Monday, for example, based on tags. Okay, let's see what output we will get. I'm just trying to just coordinate with some developers and the testers. I'm just not getting the right person here for the channel. So where they can explain the end-to-end process. Let's say for the tester, what kind of testing is available in the market, like ingress test, other feature-based testing or something. So which tools they are using and how they test for the particular applications feature-wise. And from the development sides, like how they get the requirement as a development point of view, it might be a front end or back end, which programming they use language, and then how they co- build that logic, I mean applications. So I'm just checking with the multiple friends. So let's see. So because they might be some busy in their personal life, so and also the depend on their interested areas. Some people might be shy on the YouTube channel to speak about that. You can see Lambda function to create EC2 instance from AMI based on the tags. Okay. So this is just a sample files you can consider as AWS require. This is a module and this is a tag key, environment, production, instance type, T3 micro, key name, security groups. Lambda function to schedule EC2 instance creation by every Monday. AMI ID we need to pass here, okay? Because that will be fixed. Instance type it will take from there. And this is the status code. It's a succeed or failure. And this logs you will get in the CloudWatch logs. This is the rules of the CloudWatch event, how you can configure that. I think this is just for the creation. Let me search for the delete as well. Ever you can try from your browser as well, like this or any other way, like how we can write down the Lambda function based on the Node.js or Python base to build this logic.
Guys, I need to tell you one thing. Multiple persons are asking for the what type of projects you have done in your current organization. If this
Yes.
type of projects are there, multiple projects are there, we don't know about that. But one of the my friend is discussed with me. He was I'm working on the AWS parts, and my in my organization this type of function is going on. But because thing is that he is not understanding anything. Okay,
Mm.
so after the Namdev is tell that key boss, this is a lambda function and where this is logic is using. So that's the reason I'm asking these questions. This is told asking to the Namdev ki how this logic is going on. Because thing is that whenever we are going for the interviews and other things, so that
Mm.
time
Explain.
we can explain this ki boss on this type of environments we are working.
Yeah, right. Because during the explanation of the project, they might be give the cross question. So this is the if you aware about the backend technology, so this is the somewhere logic. So I'm not understand this is the programming way, but they use promises or somewhere. So that's the reason I'm just tell initially. If you can discuss about your any programming developer backend or front end, they will give more explanation about this logic. And tag base is somewhere they have mentioned here tag value. So we can use this tag value here to delete only that particular instance. We can pass here. Change this to your tag key and tag value. Okay, because whenever we configure any tags, there is a two option which I just shown. Let's say for the Docker host, see key and value. Okay, so that things we need to pass here key and value. So based on that, he will fetch the data and he will delete that instance. Evan, you can just use this chat GPT prompt and you can just try to search and just try with your personal account. So you will get some idea about this, how it works. And you can try either Python base or Node.js base. It's up to you. You might get some error there. So related to your CloudWatch IMA permissions or somewhere as I shown. So this, whenever you create any Lambda function, y- you will need to create the IMA roles. Okay. So if I just show you, let's say test, here you will see that option, right? You can either go with this default option, create a new role. Okay, so you don't need to define anywhere. It will automatically create one IAM role, but that will give only basic permission, basic Lambda function execution. He will not give any additional permission like EC2, S3 bucket or somewhere. If in your project, if you have a use cases like you want to write down the Lambda function where the logic is like get the data from the S3 bucket and perform some logic there, like get the metadata of the files and stored into the your RDS database. Okay, so that also the operations. In that case, you might give this permission S3 bucket or your RDS. Okay, or if you have any existing IAM role created, you can use here as well. So during my last practice, I created multiple IAM role here, so you can just check here. Okay, and if you can click on that role, you will see here role, and this is the practice use cases. So I just given the full access here. But in the real time cases, you should not give the full access for the Lambda IMR role. Okay, because if you somehow by mistakenly if you write in the wrong logic by delay to delete the resource or somewhere, so in that, and if you trigger the Lambda function, so there will be a trouble. Like if you have a full access, so he can delete the that resources. So just try to avoid that. Just give only whatever the permission required of. Okay, we have last time covered about the IMA roles and policy management. So if you can watch that video again, so that will be help. So 2, 3 use cases you can definitely try about the Lambda function. So you will get more idea. So this is about the Lambda function. We also shown that how you can change the Lambda function code. This is just a manual method. Okay. So going forward, I have in this mind by Jenkins, we can use that deployment pipeline. So when we cover that, I will show you how we can deploy the Lambda function from the pipeline. Because this is whatever the things we are learning till now, this is just a manual base. So why I'm just showing manual first, because at least you can aware about the process. Let's say if I directly start teaching the Terraform code, the writing the Terraform file, so you will not understand what in the backend what is the happening in the, let's say for the creating the EC2 instance, what's parameter we need required, what are the settings we need to change that, right? So if you just first learn about the manual way, like these are the steps and options we need to define, then in the Terraform code we will get the better idea, like your say key pair name, your elastic IP address, your disk space volume size, is volume type, then your instance type, right? So that is the reason I'm just going first manual way and then the Terraform method. So let me open that one more time. So there are lots of different things, and Lambda function has a limitation as well. Okay, so every use cases Lambda function will not work. Only the small use cases fine. But let's say some of the e-commerce data you want to perform, and that query will run more than 15 minutes. Okay, if this is the use cases, then your Lambda function will not work here because Lambda function has a limitation. If you go to this configuration and just go to this general option here, you will see the timeout and the memory allocation. Okay, there are the limitations. If I open this, you can see set memory between 128 MB minimum to 10,000, sorry, 10 GB maximum. Okay, more than that you cannot use. This is the one of the limitation. Then timeout. Okay, query timeout. I think it's max supported 15 minutes. Let me check one more time. But try to say, check. This is the second. Okay. See, the maximum timeout is 15 minutes. If there are any big data kind of process or any other process where your query expected to run more than 15 minutes. Okay, in that case, this will not work. So that is the some of the limitations you can see. In that case, people use ECS Fargate service, which we have covered last time. Okay, because that's gives the more benefits apart from this Lambda function. So in that ECS Fargate, we have seen that two options: service and task. Task you can use for the short term use cases, like if you want to execute any jobs, and then you want to terminate that container to save the cost. So that also you can use for that. And if you want to host any particular websites, then you can use that service based feature. Okay, in the Fargate. So that is the reason I'm just showing like if you can do the practice, so you will get more concept on that. And when we look at the real time project going forward, so definitely I will show more the options through the nowadays we just cover the Jenkins, but my planning is to have a configure the GitHub Action YAML file as well. Okay, because people are using nowadays GitHub Actions. If time permits in future, I will create more videos on harness as well. Sometimes people use harness tool as well. Okay, so I'm already started working on that in the project where harness is deployed, and this is the first project where we finally get the success on that. So in future, I will create the video on that as well. But the main is like we need to aware about the how to write down that YAML file. So that is the main thing. Okay, the stage will be a similar way, but there might be a slightly changes. So that we will cover going forward. Okay. Sometimes people use GitLab CI/CD, sometimes people use Jenkins and GitHub Actions, something like that. So at least if you can little bit aware about the Jenkins pipeline and then your GitHub Actions, how to write down that YAML files, that will be a enough at least to crack the interviews. And once you get the jobs in that between, so definitely we can learn more based on the project and their tech stack available. Because sometimes tech stack will be changed based on the company to company and the project. Okay, because they have some defined tech stack there. Sometimes you will get the Bitbucket, sometimes use GitHub, GitLab, something like that. Okay, that is the part of the Lambda function.
And also, Namdev, sometimes whenever we are doing the troubleshooting, sometimes we are not getting the properly VPC or not getting a properly HG group. It is a mistake with the functions, whatever the script we have written.
Security groups, yeah, we need to give the proper values.
If the all the things are properly in the scripts, so all the things are working properly,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, if we have missed any values or given the wrong values, so we might definitely get the errors there. So like some value not found or sometimes permission denied. So in that case, we need to give the proper permission, whichever the roles we are using there.
Okay.
So depend on the error code, which type of error you are getting. If it's related to permission, then just definitely go to the roles which you are using in the AWS and just check the that role policies. Let's say you want to perform any operations on the S3 bucket to get the data, but get the data you have permission. But if you want to perform another operation like delete that object from the S3 bucket, and if you don't have that permission, definitely you will get the permission denied issues. Because in that case, you need to add that policy there, that delete object, then it will be resolved. And in one more use cases like error in S3 bucket, if you want to fetch particular file, if that file is not available in that bucket, in that case also you will get the error like 403 or something. So that also you need to check in the real time. It's completely depend on the error code, what kind of error you are getting. This kind of code you don't need to remember, so you can easily get from the either you can just go to internet, Google and or chat GPT. But there might be slightly change. You need to perform like your instance name, instance ID somewhere like that, and the region code. So just blindly don't copy paste the ChatGPT generated code or any other black box generated code. So there might be some changes we need to do. Okay. So based on that, you can just do changes. This is the older Lambda function where initially when I start the initially Lambda function. So you can see 8 months ago. So at that time I was doing this practice, but nowadays AWS launch more features like system manager. In that system manager, you can configure the options like daily basis stop and start the EC2 instance or RDS. Okay. Just read more about that system manager. You will get more options there. So lots of features are there.
Which function you are saying?
System feature, system manager. To daily basis stop or start the instance, we can write down the Lambda function. But apart from this, AWS have this feature now, maintenance window. So you can configure this as well. So you don't need to write down the any Lambda function.
System manager or maintenance window?
In the system manager is the service. In that you have the feature maintenance window. Either you can search like SSM, you will see the service, or you can just type system manager. In that you will get this feature maintenance window. And here you can configure that, create maintenance window, and you can just enable that. Here you need to search that policy. You can search, let's say EC2 stop. You can configure this scheduler here. Let's say daily basis, every time, every day. Let me just add any random value here. Okay, 10 a.m. Here we need to pass one. You can configure this all the stuffs here, Windows start date, end date, and schedule the time zone, which time zone you want to. Okay, let's say I can select Asia, Kolkata. This one, okay. And if you click on this next, so let me give 1 hour here for now.
So AWS charge for this service in real time if you use this maintenance, set up this maintenance service and
Charges wise, let me check quickly. System manager charges. Each execute script action is charged for every seconds.
okay. So while setting up the schedulers in real-time scenarios, we will have to keep the that cost part also in our mind, right? Because
Yeah, and
uh,
if you consider as a Lambda function, so it will be charged based on the execution time, how much time it takes to execute that job, and how much memory he consume. Like 50 MB, then it will be charged based on that and the time as well.
okay, okay, there is it's not free even if we are using
No,
Lambda function or
some
any other
services, yeah,
feature.
it's not free. So based on the particular job executed, how much time it takes and how much memory it takes. Okay, how you can get that information? Let me quickly show you that. Because when we work for the Lambda function cost optimization, we might get that queries or questions in the interview. So how you can check how much time it took to execute? Let's say this is the demo one, right? If I trigger this, just forget about the logic, whatever we have, but at least You can see here duration. Okay. Then build duration and memory size and memory use. Okay. So memory use 57 MB, right? And your time, how much time it takes? 16 milliseconds, not 1 second. So this is the calculation of the AWS. Based on this, he will charge. If you look at the billing from here, so whenever you get the billing or if you have any AWS account access in your project, you can just go through this option and just check the if you are using Lambda function there. So you will get the detailed idea how much total hours you use and how much charge they applied. And anyone idea about this duration? Because this is the one more use cases where in true panel or somewhere you will get this option questions. Anyone aware about the cold start or init start period? Because this is the Lambda function where it's created somewhere, right, on the backend system in the AWS. We don't know. So if you want to trigger this job, so obviously he is not ready state immediately. He will take some time to start up. So this is the period of the startup time to get the your Lambda function ready. And this is the actual timing where it's the query take execution time. So if I search Lambda cold start, if you can definitely read about this cold start. Or I can search what is cold start in Lambda function. Okay. The initial delay experienced when the Lambda function is invoked for the first time or after being ideal. So before taking your executing your query, he will take some time to prepare for that, and that is the time that cold start time. Because sometimes, let's say for example, in the general life, if you if you are trying to call someone, so our call immediately not connected, right? So it will be a route to your whichever your nearest tower and then the target user's nearest tower, right? So that will be happen within a fraction of seconds or milliseconds. So that is the things you can consider as a cold start before getting the actual execution. Or in the Kubernetes language, you can consider as a what method? Liveness or readiness probe, right? So before getting the traffic serves, we will define that, right? To take the some boot up times or prepare readiness. So that things in the Lambda function. This is the very simple query. So that is the reason he takes minimum time. But if you have any major complex Lambda function where the different logic is written, so in that case, you might get the more consumption there. Let me try to execute this. It will not work because I don't have any database right now, but I'm just trying to execute this. You can see it's taking to little bit more time. You can hear memory use 7 MB, 17 MB, but build duration you can see it's more than it's almost 2 seconds, right? And boot up time you can see. So based on your query, it will take the time. You can see here execution started. It's taking too much time. Same thing if you have any query where it will take some timing there to get the output. So that in that case, it will consume more memory and the time. So based on that, the AWS will charge the costing.
So for
Now,
example, we have trigger. For
hmm,
example, we have trigger backups. So backups till ending, it will be taking too much times. So it means that Lambda function is not good for the backup triggerings and other things, right?
no, the EC2 backup, right? So once he
Yes.
executed your job, your backup will happen in the backend. Like last time we have seen that once we
Hmm.
configure, create image and the backup, it will take some times to complete that backup, right? Lambda function will not wait for that. He just trigger your jobs, and once he get triggered successfully, he will stop his job. He will not wait until the image status should be succeed. Until you configure that logic in the Lambda function, just wait for the that status should be available.
And if my, for example, we have configured that the things, and but how we can understand कि was it will be giving the errors, or else whatever the code is getting, मतलब किधर फट रहा है क्या नहीं, वो कैसे पता चलेगा?
He will generate the CloudWatch logs. Let's say if you have related issues, I just shown one Lambda function logic here, right? You can define the 200 status and 500 status for the error code in the Lambda function logic as a code. And if you want to check more details, so definitely you can open that particular Lambda function. Let's say for this, which one we have executed now, demo Lambda. Okay. So here you will see the options of monitoring. Okay. In that case, you can go to this CloudWatch logs and you can just see the details. So in logs, you will get the details idea like is there are any permission related issues or any other errors related to your code. We can open the latest stream. Okay, and you can see this kind of, and same whatever the output we are getting there, like how much memory and the time it's took, you can see here. Maximum memory allocation is 128 megabyte MB, and out of that he used 57 MB. Okay, so
In
logs will
your
help out.
environment, in your environment, what you are using for the Lambda function? Which type of projects you are using for the Lambda functions?
So we have a one use cases. Let's say this is the Lambda function. There is one S3 bucket, and in S3 bucket we are getting the files from the client. Okay, or let me draw properly. This is RDS. Okay, this is the Lambda function, and we have a S3 bucket. Okay, in S3 bucket we are getting the files from the client or any end user. It might be related to any application data or somewhere. Okay, for example, you can consider as a data here. So as a Lambda function, we are taking the file properties. Okay, as a developer, backend developer, he need to write down the logic here, Lambda function, whatever the skill he has or in the project using like Python base or Java base somewhere. Okay, so he need to check each file and the properties like your date modified, because this is the properties of the file, right? If you click on any files, let's say this files, if I click on right click and just check on the properties. So you can get the file name, size, and the last modified date or like that. Okay. So let's say, for example, this kind of all the logic we will fetch and that file size and the file name like that. And that will be stored in the that properties will stored in the RDS. Only metadata, not the actual file. So if I want to check as an end user or somewhere or as a client, this file is successfully received in S3 bucket or not. So I will not go into the S3 bucket and check. I can simply execute the MySQL query here and just check like select star from this query like table name or schema name and just fetch the data between this date or somewhere. Okay. So I can get the records with the file name, when this file get uploaded and what is the size of that like that. Okay. So that will be details I will get the from the RDS. I will not go to the directly to S3 bucket because making the S3 bucket public is not a good practice and no one suggested that. Okay. So that is the one of the use cases.
What type of error it will be get?
In which Lambda function.
Yes. For example, Lambda function sometimes your it will be not uh, means yes. I'm just like asking for the interview purpose. So
Hmm.
they are asking what type of error it will be get and how we can resolve that errors. So could you please tell us?
Errors if you have not given the proper permission, let's say in this case, if you have not given the IAM role, okay, because we have when we create this Lambda function, definitely we will use some IAM role here. Okay, so if
For
this if
that, for that, we required the S3 roles also and RDS role also.
RDS has yes yes.
Okay, these the two roles we required, and for the Lambda functions, I need to check that what kind of roles it will be required. Okay,
Hmm. Once
uh,
we set up properly,
huh,
then permission related issues it will not occur here.
okay, but sometimes whatever the files are there, files are not properly.
I'm just thinking what kind of other permission because we normally once we set up the proper this things we will not get regular basis error. So I'm just trying to remind if there any issues we faced for this scenario. The other thing is like if there are any network issues with this RDS or RDS is not available. So in that case also you will get the error like because during the putting this metadata file in the RDS, you might get this kind of errors
We can still have
related to
configuration errors too.
yeah configuration errors or database not available. Or sometimes if we change the database credentials, but that is not updated in the Lambda function, in that case as well, access denied or somewhere something. And as I said just before, so we are storing the database details in the secret manager. If that secret manager permission is not allocated to this IAM roles, that permission also we will get issues, permission denied or something. Or if you have changed the value of this secret manager in that case as well. So first thing is permission should be properly configured here on the Lambda function IAM role. If there are no files uploaded, then he will not execute like because data is not available up to date, right? So whatever the data is there, he will already he's already pushed all the metadata updated in the database. Let me back here. So this is just we created. Okay, now coming to the API gateway. API gateway is just a mediator of the between two services. I click new here. Let's say this is the API gateway. API gateway act as a similar like your postman or courier delivery or your hotel waiter or your basically it's a mediator between two services. Okay, let's say you have this here lambda function, and this is the API. On the top of that, you use API gateway. Okay, and there might be a different client who want to use your whatever the logic happened here in the services. But instead of giving this lambda function endpoint to this user, because that is not possible, so we can give the API endpoint to this user. Okay, so he can consume your services. So I will give you some examples so then you can just understand better. So as I just said, this is you are the customer, okay, and this is your kitchen, okay. So we as a customer, we go to our hotel. So we cannot directly go to into the kitchen and just ask like what's today's offer or the delicious dish, right? So who will mediate here as a waiter or captain sometimes, okay? So he will take the order. So whatever the requirement we will have, let's say we need your paneer chili or chicken chili, whatever. So in that case, we just give the requirement to this person as a captain. Then captain or waiter will go to the kitchen and he will pass your requirement to this kitchen. Okay. If that is available, that dish is available, then you will get as output like yes, dish is available and you will receive within a whatever the defined timeline. Okay. So in short, you will get the output if that data is available in the target system. If the data is not available, you will get the error like 404 or somewhere. Okay. As a API gateway, he is act as a mediator. Let's say one more customer comes in the hotel. He might ask the different orders like that, any other cold drinks or somewhere. So he will take the requirements and he will pass to the further system. If that data is available, so he will give the output. Okay. But as a customer, we cannot go to the directly kitchen and give the order. So same thing here. Let's say if you have a project and their API gateway use. Let's say I want to use this lambda function. But as a lambda function, we don't have any endpoint directly to use that. Okay. So in that case, we use API gateway, and behind the API gateway, we can configure that lambda function as a target. And whatever the API gateway we are executing, that will be if the data is available, we can get the output here. So in the API gateway, there are different types. So we generally use for the response, request and response with the REST API. And you might also heard about this lots of the time, REST API. Okay. Definition wise, you can just definitely search about this. What is the REST API somewhere? Okay. So in that there are two things. One is private API gateway. Another one is public API gateway. Okay. Public API gateway means that endpoint will expose to the public world. You can access that API gateway URL from anywhere. Private means as the concept called as a private within the AWS VPC, you can use that. Outside access will not be possible. Okay. So there might be use cases like where you need to configure that API gateway only for the within a AWS VPC services, not the outer world. So in that case, you can use that private API gateway. In the big organization, if you want to allow only for within a VPN networks, in that case, you need to configure that private API gateway. Okay. And for the public expose for the public service, you can use that public facing API gateway. So configuration wise, if you click on this build option, you will see. So sometimes people use for the API gateway configuration Swagger UI. So like we use IDE tool, right? Visual Studio or IntelliJ or somewhere, right? For the designing any code. So there is a UPI based Swagger UI. Anyone heard about this? You can configure your API gateway logic here in the Swagger. This is the one of the I never try this, but some all some friends are using this Swagger UI. So let me show you this first. You can configure as a new API gateway here. Give the name demo DevOps. So we have AWS console access, so we can trigger this Lambda function easily here, okay, right? And we will get the output hello from DevOps. But as an end user, let's say I want to configure somewhere in the other applications. So I will not get the Lambda function endpoint here. OK, that's not possible. So in that case, I can give the API gateway endpoint. So here you will get the options you want to keep private or public one. OK, so for now, just testing point of view, I will just go with this public one because I don't have any other resource available now to fetch from the private. So once that is created, here you will get the you need to configure the methods, get method, post method. Anyone read about this? Get method to fetch the data, post method you want to push if you want to push something data in that particular system. So you can use that post method.
No.
Let's say as of now, we don't have any post method available now. Okay, I can go with the get one because if you configure this get method, we can get the same output by using this API gateway URL. Okay. Which Lambda function you want to configure as an endpoint? You can search DevOps, demo DevOps Lambda function, right? This one we have configured demo DevOps Lambda function. Okay, we are using as an endpoint. So there are other options available here, but I am not going to use that. You want to give the authorization as well because keeping the Lambda API gateway publicly, which might be a security risk. So in that case, you can configure the authorizer, which you need to generate one token code there to pass during the execution of that API gateway. Okay. So for now, I'm just keeping that part and just creating the method. So which URL I can use to use this API gateway? So here we will get one API gateway URL. I will show you. Earlier one UI was different, but now they have modified their UI. Okay. So old version, they have some better UI, but now they have updated this one. So here you can see the options. If you click on that, you will see for this API gateway, which endpoint we are using. You can see as a Lambda function here. If I go to APIs, okay, sorry, we need to deploy that. Okay. Once method is created, here the option deploy API gateway. Choose the stage. As of now, there is no stage. We can configure as a, let's say, dev stage. Okay. Stage you can define dev, test, or production one. This is the invoke URL. If I let me try to search this URL in the browser, let's see. So whatever the configuration available in the Lambda function, we are directly getting from here. So if I change the Lambda function logic here, let's say demo. Okay. If I deploy this. So from the public network, I can use instead of directly using here, we can use API gateway endpoint here. And if I refresh one more time, you can see the value has been changed. So this is the endpoint benefits we can use from any different services. We consume any particular services, okay? Because giving the Lambda function endpoint directly access, it's not possible. So if you want to configure the multiple verticals or project in a single base, So you can share this API URL.
So does it mean that we use this API gateway only for Lambda functions, then using with Lambda functions, or with some other feature also we can use this API gateway?
Let me check here the stages. So here you can see the target type. Okay, HTTP. If you want to call any other method, any other endpoint apart from the Lambda function. So you can also configure that. AWS services. Let me check which services he's supporting. You can see Athena, auto scaling, cloud formation, CloudFront, CloudWatch logs. So these are the method type you can create. So other method I have not tried. So in the last project, we are using this Lambda function for this API gateway. Because if you want to integrate more verticals means different modules in your project. Let's say you are working for the e-commerce, okay, and you want to access payment gateway, right? In your applications. If you open any website of the e-commerce, let me check which one I have. Let's say I have Amazon.in, right? So this is the front end, for example. Now when we talk about the e-commerce, there will be a different services integrated, like your payment gateway, your database, your card service, right? This is the card service. Card service might be deployed on different containers. Okay, so that will be deployed somewhere. So if I use, let's say I want to use HDFC Bank payment gateway, so they will not allow me to directly access to their database, right? So what they can do is they will create on the top of their database, they will create the API gateway, for example, and that API gateway they will give us to use that payment gateway method. So if you can open the developer method here, let me drop down here and check if we get that option. So
Security.
no, I want to drag it to bottom side. We can drag here vertical, horizontal. Here network option is there. Okay. Let me search anyone. Yeah, network is here. So you can see whenever I click somewhere, we will get the some output here, right? Which URL we are trying to hit in. So I can try to go to the payment page now from here. Let me add in the random values. You can see the all the network activities here. So wherever they are, if they are using any CDN services or any other API gateway or any API, you can see here. Let me add this product in my bucket. For example, this one, buy now or add to cart. You can see the traffic is moving. They might be add their different gateways here. Let me go to the payment mode and I will see. Acha, I just search with the COD option. Let me cancel that. Okay, let me order one more time with the any other payment gateway.
अरे असं नका.
For example, this product. Buy now. So payment method, I can go with this, for example, net banking. Okay. So here, let me check with the HDFC Bank or credit card. Everywhere you can see the status code is 200. That means everything is working fine. If you have any issues related to any activity or network issues, you will get some or any values page or not found, you will get the error like 404 or somewhere something. So it will ask me to add the details. Continue. You can see this is the different URL for the Nexus client. Okay, this is the internet banking page. So you might face see somewhere the different URL of the merchant. I think it's payment details went before that. So you can see the page is different here, right? Net banking URL they have integrated. So because of the security reasons, they might be exposing they might not exposing here the actual endpoint because if that endpoint is getting easily to spammer can attack, right? Okay, so there might be a different DDoS attacks to prevent that user might get more secure mechanism to do not expose that actual URL. So that's the reason we are not getting, but we can use any particular payment gateway API in the front end platform. That is an activity done by the developers actually. In the code, they can maintain that the information. But we can use particular service API gateway in our front end apps if we want to consume their services like payment gateway. Okay, so this is the one of the example for the payment gateway. So instead of actually accessing their database, we can use as a API gateway as a mediator. We can just deal with that transaction. So whatever the transaction we are doing from here, because when any payment gateway authorized to any e-commerce website, so they might definitely give the some authorization code there or cookies, some sessions there for particular time period. So if you even if you observe that if you log into any particular net banking, so after some times it will be expire. So that session timeout, that is a part of the security, because if you keep any particular session active, so some unauthorized person can access easily if you keep unlock your system and go somewhere. So in that case, they added that provision. So now if I want to share my API gateway to any other persons, they want to consume my service, so I can share this URL. And apart from this, I can configure for the security point of view, I can configure the other token based system in my service, and I can give that as well at the authorization. So these are the methods we can create. So the rest of the things I have not tried, but you can just read about this, like what endpoints we can add in this API gateway. And these are the methods like delete method gate. Gate means we can just fetch the data from that system. If you want to fetch any records from the particular database, so we can use that. And for that we use Postman. I think I don't have installation. Anyone heard about this Postman?
Yes.
So we can use Postman to perform this kind of activities, get, post, or delete operations. Delete means we can delete the records by using this Postman instead of
Yes,
login
we are
directly to
using
that.
for this is Postman is we are using for that servers secrets servers certificate configurations. We are using that. Whatever the
Hmm.
certificates are properly or not, we are using for that purpose.
So which method you are executing?
The thing is that I have just seen this, but all the things are done by the L4 and architecture level persons.
Okay, you are just passing the endpoint from this Postman.
Yes.
Okay, so you might be, if you want to just check the status, you might definitely you can use, or you might use, you are using the get method just to check the status. So you can check once you log into the office. So definitely that might be a method, because without that we cannot pass any particular things. If you're only checking the remote status, definitely you might using this get method. Or if you want to push any something data in that system, so you can use post method there. You can just simply change it to post method, and you need to pass the parameter which you want to pass. And once that executed properly, you will see the options like 200 OK and how much time it's executed. And if you check the API gateway costing, In free tier, we will get 1 million REST API called received in the free tier up to 12 months. After that, if you search, let's say for Mumbai, first 300 million request per month, price will be like per 1 million, $1. So these are the costing. And after more than 300 million, it will be a little bit discount there. If I open my billing and cost, I would say you can definitely go through and read about these two services, Lambda function, API gateway, and SQS. Okay, these are the three serverless services. You can definitely read about that. And we have not covered the DynamoDB, but definitely you can read about that as well. It's a NoSQL database. So for the DynamoDB, we like in the MySQL, we have seen that we need to create the database credentials and we can use from the any client. But in the Dynamo cases, we cannot use that from without that credentials. We can use that IAM role credentials within AWS services, and we can just pass that information. So in the Dynamo cases, we will not get that credentials. We can simply create the tables over there, and we can start using by authorizing the access key and secret key or IAM roles for any from any Lambda function or any EC2 base. Billing wise, let me check if I get any API gateway cost, or even in your organization if you have account access and you are using that services API gateway or Lambda function. So for Monday, you can definitely go and just check the costing part if you have access. This is not showing because the credit is there, but I'm almost exceeded with that credit. So soon I will get the charges. But now it's not showing anything like that. API gateway Lambda function because I rarely use Lambda function only for this session. Otherwise, just creating the Lambda function will not charge until and unless you start using it.
So basically, which functions you are using in the
In the
office environment?
project in the Node.js base, Node.js 18, 16. Earlier we used 14, but now it's end of life cycle. So we depreciate that and we used upgradation to 18 or 16. They will suggest to use latest one, Node.js stable version. I think
Means
20 or something.
Lambda functions, in the Lambda functions you are using a Node.js only.
Yes, yes.
And Namdev, can I take 2 minutes for you again?
Yes, yes.
The thing is that, for example, if we are having the servers on the physical nodes, okay, on that physical servers, the SQL database is there or Oracle database is there. Whatever
Mm.
we want to migrate to the AWS, how we can process for that, or directly lift and shift only we can do.
Oracle database, I have
Oracle
not
or
tried.
SQL, anything are there. For
Okay.
example, how we can do this type of migrations.
For that, you can use, let's say, for example, which I personally configured for the real time in last organization. So we use DMS service, database migration service. So database migration service, you will get here. Let me check the source endpoint. Which endpoint is he supporting?
Data above that endpoints option is there.
This is just the mediator of this database service. If I click on the source endpoint, you can see source engine. So here the MySQL Aurora is supported, Postgres, document DB, which is the NoSQL database. Even you can configure for this S3 bucket as well. I have not tried practically, but these are the supported source endpoint. IBM database, MariaDB, Microsoft Azure SQL, Microsoft SQL servers, MongoDB, Oracle as well. Okay, and this SAP database. So practically, I have configured for the MySQL database servers, which was the on-premises data center, which was hosted on the IBM data center. So we migrated from there to in AWS RDS. This is the source endpoint. Once you configure that endpoint, also you need to configure the target as well here, target endpoint.
Okay.
And here in the target, you need to give the RDS, like which one you want to use, Aurora or standard normal one. We have seen this different, right? In the Aurora cases, you don't need to worry about the disk space and other features. And in the MySQL, you need to take care about the disk space majorly, how much you want
Hmm.
to keep, and gradually it will increase. You need to take care of that. But in the Aurora cases, you don't need to worry about that. It will automatically scale up or down as a part of the EBS volume. It's in auto scaling. So
Understand.
if I try to make it overview like simple one. So I have already prepared the documentation. I think last time I have shared. Anyone
Mm,
remember that?
no.
Okay, let me share that. Video I have not prepared yet. I need to prepare that. Maybe after this batch and I will prepare because that is a in demand requirement. Let's say this is your source MySQL source. This is your DMS service in mediator. Okay, DMS instance. And this is your target RDS. Let's for example. Okay. So what you need to do as a migration strategy. So this is just I'm giving the configuration wise. Okay. Apart from this, definitely you need to follow the procedure like your approvals, your getting the source information and whatever the process is there, a standard procedure. Okay. Taking the approvals, the planning like that. Once that is done, the process wise, then
In this, whatever the we need to require the downtime for that servers also.
I will come to that, the downtime part.
Please, you have to explain the source again because our system was freezing while you were explaining the source.
Sorry.
I said you have to, please, you have to explain the source again because your system was freezing while you were explaining the source at my end.
There is a two things like if you have a way massively transactional data like e-commerce, in that case, definitely you might need some downtime because at least we need to cut down the traffic. Let's say this is the MySQL, your e-commerce based database, and there might be lots of transaction happen, right? Transaction. So in that case, if you lose any single transaction during the migration, that will be risky. So in that case, to configure this in the DMS, we need to configure your source endpoint for this and for this target endpoint as well by getting the temporary credentials like let's say for this MySQL database you only need read permission. Okay, because you are just pulling the database. But here RDS you need read and write permission because you are pushing the data to the target database. In the MySQL, if you aware about this role permission, there is a permission role level like read and write and other permission. Okay, so source wise you just need read permission, but the target wise you need read and write permission. Then in the DMS you can configure one instance with some particular instance like storage 30 GB or 40 GB whatever. And in that case there is option in the DMS. If I show you, let me go to the this UI also get changed because earlier one is different one. AWS continuously keep changing their UI. There was a jobs, but now I think they have changed. If I open this replication instance, it's just for the replication instance. endpoint database migration task. Okay. So here, if I click on this create task, sorry, here I will show you the option migration type. So here, migrate complete data, migrate existing data, or migrate existing data as well as replication ongoing changes. Means load full one-time data, everything to the target system. After that, continuously, if anything comes here as a source database, that replication also get replicated here. That changes continuously. That is the option here, migration type. Migrate existing data and keep replicating ongoing changes data, which is the called as a CDC, chain data capture. Okay. But if you want to only migrate the data full load from whatever the available on the source database by taking the downtime. So it's a downtime window. It depends on your how much database size is there. If there is a minimum database size like 10 GB or something, that will not take too much time. So you can take minimum downtime there. But if you have a larger database size like 200 GB or 300 GB more than that, so in that case, you might get some there, major downtime because you don't want to lose any single transaction data. So for the major level enterprise edition, you might get some knowledge about this, how the people manage for the real-time migration. But these are the features like migrating the existing data or migrate existing data as well as whatever the data changes happening on the source database that also replicate. But when you configure this, if you want to keep both the system at a time, like source as well as the target. But if you are planning to completely cut down your source database and you want to migrate fully to the RDS, in that case, you can just stop the connectivity for the taking the maintenance window to so every new transaction will not happen on that source database and you don't want to lose that. So all the data you can migrate to the target database. So when we configures last time, so what we do actually, there was that was a MS SQL database. So I think one developer is there and he configured like that. Whatever the data changes in the SQL servers, he just take that data as a dump and he just import in the database servers, target database servers. So during the coordination with the different teams, we need to coordinate your client team for the approvers, then your database team, your network team, because network also involved there. If you want to make a connectivity between this your source database to because this is hosted on your data center, right? Not in the particular AWS services. So in that case, your network team should configure the LAN somewhere, NAT gateway kind of topology. So then you can able to access this source database through the network. So network team, we also need to coordinate with that and database team as well to check the records, migrate whatever the migrated data in the target, that database team should check properly, like all the records are matching or not properly. Because when we are dealing with the e-commerce or any banking transactional, that will be a very risky to lose any single transaction. So when we prepare this kind of migration activities, we need to prepare with the rollback plan as well. If something not working properly, then how we can change this rollback to back. So before doing the actual practice, you can have one POC as well with your test environment, how you can migrate this complete activity before doing for the production one. So last time I created one document here with by giving the complete strategy like process wise and other stuffs. Let me show here. I think it's in 5 boot camp. Okay. Yeah, the migration part. So here I just mentioned the process wise. what kind of migration are there, then migration types, and then tools to use for the migrations. So there are some paid tool as well, Cloud Engineer and other subs. Migration strategy like discovery and planning before migration, collect all the information, because this is the very important part. How much the source database size, what kind of users they have configured for that, what is the instance type, and how much the resource utilization they need, because when we set up for the target, so according to the current use cases utilization, we need to prepare for that as well. Let's say on premises data center, if you have a hardware server, 32 GB RAM or 4 cores or somewhere CPU, and in the actual target when we want to migrate in the RDS, if you are trying to create just for the 2 GB memory servers, so that might be a crash or give the very low performance when the actual data center servers are using more processor there. So that also we need to plan properly. Then process wise, taking the client's approvals, then coordinate with the multiple teams like a network team, your database team, DevOps team, and other developers teams. Okay, because when we are changing the database, obviously endpoint will change, right? In the on-premise data center, that IP will be different, and when we are trying to deploy on the RDS, that URL will be changed. Okay, so that also we need to take care where that endpoint is added in the application servers. Okay, the location that developer might aware about that. So that is the reason we need to take care. And before doing the actual migration, we need to perform the POC. So during the POC, we can just get the idea like what kind of issues we will face, what things we might miss during the migration activity. So that will be help in the actual migration activity. Keep rollback plan. That also very important. If something goes not working and goes wrong, so we need to plan for that rollback. And after the post migration, we as a testing team will be involved there, so that also do the testing application testing post migration. So let me share this.
And Namdev, at the time of the starting of the class today, you were showing some permissions we have to set up while using Lambda functions, something like that, in order
Just one,
to,
one minute.
yeah.
Just 1 minute, my kids is here. Yeah, sorry, what was your question?
Yes, I was saying that initially at the time of starting of the today's class, you were showing in order to execute the Lambda functions, we should have some permissions or
Mhm.
something like that in order to execute on EC2. We were showing something. So
Yeah, yeah.
in between, we were asking some questions, so you missed it. So if you can cover this quickly. You got it right, what I'm trying to say.
So how to assign that permission?
Uh, you were saying that some roles or permissions should be there for Lambda function in order to execute.
Mhm.
Uh, somewhere option you were showing in Lambda function, inside Lambda function.
That I shown, but let me repeat one more time. If I open this Lambda function, oh God, this system is really performing poor.
I think you were telling that some IAM roles should be there,
Yeah, I was
should have the permissions.
explain about that, but if you miss, let me
Okay.
repeat that one more time. The browser is stuck actually. When we create the Lambda function, the option is there. If I open this Lambda function, post your practicals, just remove those Lambda function and triggers. Otherwise, it will execute unnecessary. Okay. So let's say create Lambda function, paste. It's already there. Okay. So here you can select either if you have already created any Lambda roles, you can just select from this list. Okay. If you don't have, then you just select this option. Here Lambda function will automatically create that, but that will be just basic Lambda function permission, just execute permission. If you want to perform that Lambda function operation to stopping the any EC2 instance or RDS or any taking backups, so that level of the permission you need to assign. So if I click on this demo Lambda, let me remove this event first, otherwise it will unnecessarily trigger. Delete. Okay, the permission you will see the option here. Permissions. So you will get this role name. If I click on that, so we can route to this IAM roles service here, and you can see the options. The basic policy which is by default created, basic Lambda function execution role only. Okay. If you want to perform additional roles like S3 bucket or any other EC2, you can create either attach policy or create inline policy. Anyone can explain this difference? Separate policy or inline policy, or what is the inline policy? Anyone read about that? You might get question on this. These are the real-time use cases policies where people most time the time configured inline policy.
Attach policy is the new attach a policy means whatever the previously policy are there, we need to attach that policy, and inline policy is like just like we need to create a new policy.
Yeah, that will create new policy, but the any limitation or difference between normal policy or this inline policy?
Uh, Inline policy is basically created by uh, it's like customized format.
Okay, so if I explain the difference between this, we can definitely go through the documentation as well, just to check more on this theoretical. But the difference is like normal policy when we create from these policies. Okay, here customized policy, we can attach that policy to number of users or roles. That is no limitation. But when we create particular inline policy for particular roles, for example, this is the role. For example, this one. Okay, we have option this create inline policy. This inline policy only bound to this role. You cannot create attach this inline policy to any other users or roles. Once you deleted this role or user, that inline policy also get destroyed. I hope it's clear.
Yes.
Okay, so inline policy will be bound to particular user only, user or role. That inline policy will not possible to attach more than that user. Anyone any doubts in this policy? Because this is the real-time use cases where we also configure sometimes in the project inline policy. That will gives more security manner. Okay. If there are no questions, then I have one more similar question on this. Anyone read about the permission boundary? Because these questions I'm reminding because you are asking. This is the real-time use cases questions. Anyone read about this permission boundary? No? Okay. If I give the any particular example, like let's say you have a 2 BHK flats, okay? You have access of the main door to enter into that flat, but you don't have access to any particular rooms, like your any particular bedroom or kitchen. So that is the called as a permission boundary. Just give me 1 minute. If I show any one example, let's say for example, you have created one IMA users which has full access of the EC2 instance. Okay, but apart from that, you are also created one of the permission boundary where you can give the permission boundary like that user has a full access of the EC2 instance, but he can only perform stop and start the EC2 instance. So that you can things you can manage in the permission boundary. If I search permission boundary, let me open the one of the example where that image goes. Because this is the use cases where enterprise organization use because they don't want to give unnecessary full access for any particular permissions or a policy that user want to change, because the security wise they are very strict if you are working with the major organization. In that things they configure the organization policy where they add as a permission boundary. I am a full access. Or let me show you here. Let's say let me go to this user, for example, Jenkins users. You can see here permission boundary. Okay. Set a permission boundary to control the maximum permission of this user. Use this advanced feature used to delegate permission management to others. If I click on this, if I show you this permission has EC2 full access. Okay. But if I set the permission in that VPC, sorry, EC2, before that you can create one custom policy like start or instance or stop instance, and you can just allocate that permission. So even that user has a full permission, but he can only perform the stop or start permission. So this kind of situation, this is I'm just giving the simple example, but in the organization way, in the big organization, let's say you have a full access, but you cannot perform some activity there like any user creation or any like a billing part you cannot see, or any like you cannot purchase any domain registration like that. So the where they feel like they should not give the access, they can configure in the permission boundary and they will automatically apply to your users when they are managing through this active directory or somewhere as a single sign-on. Because in the organization they will not create a individual IMA users for every users. Okay, like in the AWS service we have IMA users, right? This feature. So they will not create user here. They will create your user in the single SSO page, whatever they are using, active directory or somewhere. So from there they will manage that policy. Because small scale industry that is fine, like you have a 10 users or somewhere, but when let's say for example Amazon, Microsoft or Google, they have a employee in the lakhs. Okay, So how they can manage through this user management? So they have a separate user management there, Active Directory, and they will configure this identity access center, SSO. So from there they will give the permissions and other access level. Even if you are working on the some in the industry, right? So you will log in as sometimes people use login username as an employee ID or your first name dot last name or somewhere, whatever that they have a pattern. Any other questions?